Okay, my name is Solomon Eligebu, or Eli for short, if you prefer that. Now, we are going to deal with the introductions, then we'll look at why we want to gain mastery over our finances. We'll look at the biblical foundations because, of course, even though we are talking about financial resources, money, and the others, we will not seek to make money or utilize money the way that ordinary people will do it. Therefore, in any of the presentations that you'll find me in, of course, we ought to have biblical foundations before we proceed. And then we'll look at the practical tool which we are going to look at, which is a cash budget. We'll explain what it is. We'll do a practical demonstration for all of us. And when we get to the practicals, I wish that you give me your input as well so that it becomes relevant to all of us. And then we'll have our takeaways. And if there are any questions, we can take them from that point. All right. So when we talk finance at its basic levels, we are essentially trying to talk about how do we raise resources, and then how do we apply the same resources. It is very important to everyone, even for businesses. You cannot underestimate the importance of finance in our lives and also in the lives of businesses. In the business world, it is described as the lifeblood of businesses. Now, there are rules that govern the world of finance, and it is important that we learn some of these things and also apply it to our lives. On a personal level, of course, we require resources to deal with our day-to-day needs while thinking of the big ticket items that have significant impact on the way we live as well. So whilst you may be looking for our 10, 20 CDs to buy data, we are also thinking at the back of our minds, okay, at what point do I buy land? Do I buy a car? And all of that. If you have ever heard of the term cost of living, it only means that to be alive has a cost. And it's important that we have the necessary financial resources that will help us to meet those costs. The absence of finances actually is one of the biggest causes of sin. We have people who go astray because of the lack or the absence of financial resources. So, in as much as the love of money is the root of evil, the lack of it can also lead us to evil. Now, we want to master our finances. So essentially, with this, we'll be looking at how do we make it, how do we use it. And when we say mastering your finances, we are talking about detailed planning. We already mentioned that in finance, you are talking about what is coming in and then what is going out. But it's not just about just making the money and spending it. For you to gain mastery over it, it means that you need to do proper planning. You detail where it is coming from, and then you also set out in advance what you would apply the resources to when it comes. So it is not just planning, okay, how do I get money? How do I get money? No, it is also important that you plan that when the resources come, how do I apply it? And it is even important that you plan what the resources must be used for before they arrive. Else, I've heard people say, oh, I got resources, I got money, I didn't know where the money passed. That is what usually happens when the money comes, but there's no plan. So for you to gain mastery, we are saying that one, detail the potential sources, and also set out in advance the uses to which you put it, the timing, and then the possible scenarios. I've heard Nigerians say, make you no plan, give money when no come. So long as you are planning for your financial resource, you need to look at which ones are more likely to come more reliably. So even in terms of trying to schedule, okay, this one will come, even if, let's say, you have a number of friends who owe you, there are people, okay, this one, when he says he will pay, he will pay. But this one, even though he says he will pay, I cannot actually use it as part of my planning. So we need to look at the possible scenarios. What if what you are planning for does not arrive on time? What do you do? So it also calls for constant monitoring and preempting changes so that you can still keep yourself afloat. Now, as the financial resources deal with both the inflow and the outflow, there are instances where you may have excesses or shortfalls, and you have to make decisions as to what to do in those circumstances. So it is not something that you take lightly at all. It takes real mastery to do, and we are going to look at some of those practical elements this evening. Now, why do we want to study or gain mastery over our finances? One is that it will allow us to plan and strategize for different time horizons. When I say different time horizons, we may plan for a week, a month, a year, but it's to surprise you, there are people who plan for 10 years, who plan for 5 years, some plan 15 years, and they are deliberate at it. So they plan for the long term, but then they break these long-term plans into medium and short term. So it's a 10-year plan, but he breaks it into 5. Then the 5, he breaks it to 1, 1, 1, 1. So every year that comes, he looks at, okay, what have I done towards getting me to the objective that I've set for myself for 5 years? So it allows us to plan. And then to also allow us to achieve specific goals. So we may plan regardless of the time horizon. Let's say you are doing this for a month, a year, 5 years, 2 years. If the objectives are, okay, I want to buy maybe a computer in 2 years' time, these financial principles will allow us to be able to achieve these objectives within the time frame that we have set for ourselves. Gaining mastery over your finances will also allow you to better prepare for unforeseen circumstances. Let's take an example of the COVID scenario that we had. So COVID came, many people could not go to work and they are at home. Now, if you are somebody who is paid based on the number of days you go to work and you are unable to go, what is the preparation that is in place? So these financial plans would allow you to prepare such that when the unforeseen happens, you are still able to keep yourself afloat, at least for a reasonable period of time. Our objective also to enable us avoid entering into deep debt and then financial crisis. Now, it is not irregular that once a while you may require some financial assistance. Oh, you can meet your friend, you know what, and I get, let's say, 200 cedis, I'll give it to you next Sunday if possible. But when you get into such debt, so much debt that you are unable to bring yourself out, then you are in deep debt, and that's what we call financial crisis. There is essentially no way out of it for you. You can declare bankruptcy, because when you turn left and right, there is no way for you to come out of that debt. But it is when we plan properly and gain a foothold over how we generate resources and how we apply resources that will allow us to avoid some of these traps. And one thing also that is dear to me is that gaining mastery over your finances will promote independence. It is not always that you'll have to fall on someone to say, you know what, maybe, you know what, I'm cash strapped, can you bail me out? No. But if you're able to do some of these things properly, it allows you to, it promotes financial independence. It also promotes self-sufficiency, so that there is enough for you to take care of your needs as and when they arise, and also reduce the dependency ratio. There is one thing that I also want to add, that it allows us to have sufficient financial resources so that we can be of benefit to others as well. Now, there may be somebody who needs, let's say, 100 cedis and steps up to you. You wish you could help, but because you are not in the position, or your things are not arranged in such that it frees those resources to be able to lend a hand to somebody, we are unable to offer such help. But proper financial planning that allows us to gain control over how we generate resources and spend them will allow us to also lend them, have sufficient resources to lend a hand to some others. So let's look at some of the biblical foundations that we will draw on. Now, the Bible lets us know that, and God says, the silver is mine, the gold is mine. So what I want us to draw from here is that whatever resource that comes into our domain is a gift from God to us. Okay? And if it is God that grants us the power to generate wealth, then what we have over that wealth or those resources is a stewardship mandate. And by stewardship, it means that you receive it in gratitude and then you don't dissipate it anyhow. So you are receiving what God is giving you with gratitude, but in utilizing it, you're also exercising care and caution such that you do not waste it anyhow. Now in Ecclesiastes 3:1 and 2, we are told that seed time and there's a time to sow and then there's a time to reap. And in Genesis, we are told that for so long as the earth remains, seed time and harvest time shall not cease. What I want us to draw from this as one of our biblical foundations is that for every harvest that we get, there is a portion that we need to use for seed, and then there is a portion that we need to use for bread. And therefore, if you harvest and you consume all of it, then you are not keeping to the mandates of seed time and harvest time. And in fact, you must have a lot of faith to be able to consume both your seed and your bread. Because in that case, if God does not intervene on your behalf, then you will definitely go hungry. So if you have set out the principle that there must be seed and harvest, so when you harvest, of course, you will have to consume some, and that is the bread. But you also need to reserve seed that you need to use to plant for the next season. So when resources come, it is not that we consume everything, but there's a portion that we must set aside to be able to commit to the next planting season. And the last foundation I want us to look at is where Christ, in telling those who are following him that whoever wants to follow him should take up his cross and follow him and must reject him and his family. He said, who sets out to build a tower without sitting down to plan? You don't want to start something and then end up in the middle and you're stuck, and people will come and make mockery of you. So it speaks to planning. So 1, yes, we receive the resources. 2, we consume some and reserve some for seed. And 3, whatever significant thing that we want to do. Building a tower is not a mere thing. It's a significant undertaking. So for anything that is significant that we want to do that require resources, it means that we need to set out to plan such that we can do it and do it to completion, and also to the glory of God. Now, there is this tool that we are going to use, a practical tool that we are going to use for the demonstration today. It's a very important tool, and that is what's called the cash budget. I don't know if you've heard it before, but it's actually a detailed plan that outlines what is coming in and then what will go out. And it's for a specific period. So if let's say I'm a young person, I've just come out of school, done my national service, and I have my first job. This is a timely message because it means that even right from the start, you have an opportunity to plan your finances. And you need to set out what comes in and what goes out. This cash budget is the tool that we can use to assess whether we are generating sufficient resources or whether our resources can accommodate the expenditure that we want to undertake. It's a very flexible tool, as we will see during the demonstration, and it can be fine-tuned for several time periods. You can use it even for day. You can do a daily cash budget. You can do it weekly. It can be quarterly, annually, even for years. It has two principal elements. That is the inflow part and then the outflow part. Mainly, it is a tool that is used to project into the future. But then you can also use it to monitor your actuals. And by that, I mean that if you draw your cash budget, you will look at, okay, fine, let's say in 2 months, I'll be paid 500 cedis. Of this 500 cedis, I'm going to spend 300 cedis. So this is all in the future. However, you can also use it to look at your actuals. If this month, okay, I am paid 1,000 cedis. Of the 1,000 cedis, as I spend, I also indicate. And it allows me to know whether the 1,000 cedis that I have can accommodate all of the expense that I want to undertake, or it is not enough. And you update your actual, and in fact, it is because if you do it less on a monthly basis that spans a year, when the actual happens, you enter your actual data such that it can impact the subsequent periods. Example, you have 100 cedis, you spend 60 out of it, left 40. This 40 becomes the balance that you carry forward, and then new income will come and add, expenses will be taken out, and then you get an additional balance at the end of the period. How do I draw my own cash budget? The first thing is to be honest with yourself. What can you do with and what can you do without? So you need to clear your mind, the things that you can let go of and the things that you absolutely need. Then you define for yourself, what time frame do you want to do this cash budget? You want to do it for a month? You want to do it for a year? Do you want to do it for, let's say, 3 years, 5 years? After you've defined the time, now you estimate where the inflows are going to come from. So estimate your inflows and then you rank them based on the reliability and the timing. For example, now we are in February. When the month ends, unless the entity you work for is going to collapse, definitely your salary will be paid. If the salary is paid, let's say somebody also owes you 500 cedis. The person is a trustworthy person, the person will pay. So all these are inflows that will come to you. But then if there is any likelihood that the resource will not come, then you either leave it out, or when you are incorporating it, you make an asterisk against it because it is likely not to come. And in doing a cash budget, you don't want to incorporate items that are unreliable. What it means is that if you incorporate unreliable items and they fail, they can have significant consequences for you. After estimating your inflow, now you need to look at the outflow. The resources come, some will go out. What am I spending on? And this is where we need to go back to the foundation that we laid. So resources came. Yes, you are grateful it has come. Now, what are you going to spend them on? And are you going to spend all of it? Or some would remain at the end of the day? Now, in estimating your outflows, you have your normal operating, when we say operating expenditure in your life, you have the basic things you spend on. Let's say there's food, there's water, there's clothes, there's data, and things like that. Then there's also what you call capital expenditure. For capital expenditure, there are things that you spend on, but then it will keep on creating benefits for you over a long time. For example, if you buy a fridge, you pay for it now, but you can use it, let's say 3 years, 5 years. Some have used their fridges 10 years. So those are what you call capital expenditure. And by comparison, such items take significant amount of money to buy relative to the normal data, food, electricity, and things that you look at. So in making provision for expenditure on capital expenditure, you usually don't use one period's resources to be able to do it. Unless maybe your salary is so big that it allows you to spend on some of these things. But of course, they are not things that you purchase every other period. But there's a small caveat I want to throw in here. In making a capital expenditure or buying an item that you expect to use for a significant period, please pay attention to functionality and pay attention to quality as opposed to fashion. Why? Because if the thing is fashionable, but you spend significant amounts of money on it and it fails to live up to, let's say, 3-5 years that you plan, what it means is that instead of buying it in the next 5 years, after a year or two, you have to go and buy it again. So in making those significant purchases, we have to pay attention to quality. We have to pay attention to functionality, whether the thing is fit for purpose. Am I buying it because everybody is buying? Or this one does the job, it is effective, it's fit for purpose. And then there is also the aspect of debt repayment. In fact, as a personal principle, debt is something that I fear, as in borrowing money. It is mainly because of the biblical injunction that the borrower is a slave to the lender. So I don't want to be slave to anybody. It can be a very devastating thing if it is not handled properly. So in the absence of any loans, it means that you don't make any provision for debt repayment. Now, after you've looked at your inflows and your outflows, you need to match them. So you're matching what is coming in. If you're a national service and you're earning allowance, that is what is coming in. What are you spending it on? You also look at that list and you match it. Now, if what you plan to spend is in excess of or is more than what you are earning, it is a red flag you need to pay attention to. And that is what in finance terms you call a deficit. What it means is that what is coming in is less than what is going out. So that's a deficit. Now, if in the instance that what you are coming in is more than what is going out, then you have a surplus. And whether there's a deficit or a surplus, there are specific ways of treating them. Now, if you do your matching and you realize that, okay, I have a deficit, there are two things you can do. Actually, there are three things. One is that you can cut down on what you intend to spend on. So that is where you now go through the list again and try to prioritize. Okay, this one, I think I can postpone. I don't need it immediately. So you bring down the list of the things that you want to spend on. The second aspect is that you can do some additional thing that brings you more income. And it may not fetch as much as your original job. However, let's say somebody is going to do a job, maybe a funeral or something on Saturday, and calls you, you know what, help me go arrange chairs and stuff. You finish, he dashes you something. Now that is expanding your sources of income. Okay, and as youth ministry members, as Christians, we want to expand our ways of generating income using legitimate means. So we are looking at productive work, and there is no shame in hard work, so long as it is legitimate, productive hard work that generates additional income for you. Why not? So you can expand your inflows by doing some extra job on the side that allows you to get more. Then the third part is you can do the two. You do something that gets you more inflows, and then still cut your expenditure. That allows you to get a lot more surplus, which then frees you to do some of the things that are absolutely necessary. When I was speaking about capital expenditure, just a point to add that in buying or in paying for things that will bring you long-term benefit, we are not just talking about physical things. You can actually invest in a skill that will pay you over a longer period. So if let's say if I'm a graduate of computer science and I can add graphic design, so whilst I am doing my regular job, I am able to do flyers and stuff for people. That brings an additional income. Getting the training to become a graphic designer can actually cost you some money, but that is an investment you are making in yourself. So you are making that expenditure now such that it will bring you benefits over the long term. And those are also capital expenditure, which are investments that you are making into yourself. So in detailing our expenses, our focus should not just be on what we spend on, what we wear, what we eat, what we drink, no. But then part of the expenditure should also be spent on us, replenishing the level of skill we have or expanding our skill set such that we can become relevant. Now there's a lot of people are talking data analytics, AI. There are some of these skills that you can invest in 3 months online and you are good to go. Get the necessary skills that can transform your income over a very short period. So in spending, do not forget to also invest part of those resources on yourself. Okay, so now I want us to go to the practicals. Look at how we really do those things in reality, and then we at least appreciate the way it ought to be.